Guys, I am so excited to share this with you. I'm going to show you how to tell the story of the entire Bible on two hands, but you need a pen. I'm not kidding, you need a pen. We're going to do what you told your children not to do. We're going to write on our hands, and you need a pen. So if you don't have a pen, stop the video right now and make sure everybody has a pen. I'll wait. You got it? Okay, we're going to use 10 fingers. This is the Old Testament. This is the New Testament. The 5 big ideas of the Old Testament, we're going to just do a simple symbol for each of those. The first one is Eden, and because Eden was a happy place, we're just going to do a simple smiley face on your thumb, something that simple. The next big deal is, of course, Eden was lost through sin. Because of that, you've got all these stories in Genesis that tell how people fell into sin and what it cost to families like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, then you go into Egypt, and they're slaves in Egypt. So what we're going to do is just a simple arrow down, an arrow to the palm of your hand, which reminds you, oh, close the hand, I am enslaved. I'm held by the enemy. Well, when God released them from Egypt, He gave them 10 commands. So on your tallest middle finger, we're going to put the command of God. Just 10, just write the number 10. After the law of God, that helped them establish a nation. And so on the ring finger, think of the gold of the ring as kind of a royalty. Just do a simple little crown. It doesn't have to be artistic. It just has to be clear. Little crown on your ring finger to represent King David, King Solomon, all the kings that came after them. Well, if you know the end of the story of the Bible, because of the failure of the kings, the people of Israel went into bondage. They called it exile. So I am going to just put an X on this little finger. It wasn't the biggest part of the Old Testament, but 70 years, it was a long time if you're the ones in exile. So X is for exile. So here's the whole Old Testament. Like the big ideas. Genesis starts in a garden, happy place. Then it goes into slavery because of sin. And then it goes into 10 commandments, the law of God to create a nation, the leaders of the nation. And then because the leader's failure, you go into exile. By the time you get to the New Testament, this is harder for me because I'm right-handed. We're going to start with the pinky, and we're just going to put a cross because the death of Jesus is how the New Testament begins. That's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then we go into after Jesus, the story of the resurrection. That's how the Gospels end. Because the tomb is empty, I'm just going to do a 0. Just like that represents the open tomb, okay? And then the largest finger on this hand, Jesus, because of His death and resurrection, He took away all the law of the Old Testament, but replaced it with 2 laws, to love God and to love people. Love God, love people. So L represents love. 2, our commandments are now 2 commandments, love God, love people. And if you love people, and Jesus, this is the Great Commission, and all of the book of Acts and all the epistles really is ascending. I want you to go out and tell people about me. So I'm just going to do an arrow that goes outward because you are being sent. So think about pointing outward. God says, go into all the world and make disciples of all nations. That's the theme of our church. This is our mission, to reach the entire valley for Jesus Christ. All of that is the send, the send, the send. And ultimately, when we go out and tell people about Jesus, when all tongues and tribes and nations have heard sufficiently, only God can determine that, we are going to see Jesus come back, and He's going to take us into heaven, and heaven is basically Eden restored. In fact, many of the images are the same. The tree of life is in Revelation chapter 22 and Genesis chapter 2. So you see this kind of, all of history comes to the conclusion. It began in a garden, it ends in a garden that we call the new heaven and the new earth. Now, I want you to take your fingers and tell the story of the Bible. And what you'll notice is every finger goes together. That you have Eden and eternity. You have slavery and sending. You have the 10 commandments and 2 commandments. You have the kings of the Old Testament and the risen Jesus from the New Testament. You have the suffering of exile and the sacrifice of Christ, and they just pair so well together. This is the story of the Bible on 2 hands. And if you have 2 hands, you can know the entirety of the Bible, the dominant storyline going through all of it. And that is something worth talking about.